It's nice and cozy in my office, but it's pretty chilly outside. It's pretty chilly outside, I gotta say. Kind of wish I could spend the time in California with you guys right now.
I don't think we need to. It's up to you.
He did say
I'm sorry?
yesterday, I don't know, but
Uh,
he said he was gonna be old today.
Yeah, he called and he told me about 40 minutes late. He'll call it.
So yeah, it's probably you.
Well, we need to make sure that we enunciate and speak up so that they, we need to make sure that we enunciate and speak up so that they can hear us. You guys are right.
And when you're speaking, you have to use the microphone because they can't hear off. I have to speak up into the microphone.
And things I can say, writing pretty low volume, so speak clearly and enunciate.
Are we ready to start the meeting?
Yes.
Do we have a flag?
Sorry, we don't. I don't think. You don't have to do it.
Putting up on your phones?
Put up here in screens.
There we go. Call the meeting to order and have roll call first. Roll call, please.
Director Perezio,
Yeah.
Director Delara,
Here.
Director Lawson, Secretary Durazo,
Here.
Vice President Rodriguez, President Roberts.
Here, Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, and with liberty. Thank you. We have approval of agenda. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Public comment. At this time, comments from the audience may be made on items not listed on the agenda that are of public interest and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the district. The board has a policy of limiting speakers to no more than 3 minutes. The board cannot take action on items not listed on the agenda. Public input may be offered on agenda items when they come up for discussion and for action. Item E, strategic planning. Strategic planning workshop facilitated by Selman Associates. You're on to
Hey, everybody, it's nice to be back. I appreciate you all being here after a long previous meeting. If anybody needs to stand up, please do and walk around. This is, more of a design and ideation session, so it doesn't need to be super formal. And I want to encourage everybody to do what they need to feel comfortable. So let's get started by orienting ourselves. Okay, so we need to share the presentation. Okay, we're ready to start to the first slide if you are. Yeah. Okay, can everybody see that? It's a little bit cut off. I don't know. Okay. So we're missing number one, which is fine for now, but it will be a bit of an issue afterwards.
Wait just a second. Yeah, minimize the. Is that better?
A little bit, yeah.
Or we can do this.
It's clear on our end, Sophie.
Yeah, that's a little bit better. I think if there's any information missing as we move forward, I'll make sure to highlight it. So let's take a moment to orient ourselves in where we are in the process of designing our new strategy. We've completed the extensive discovery process and we shared the results of that process with you in the discovery report. And that is basically the way that we have yielded all the insights and the data that we're going to use as a foundation to now create and design this strategy. So what we want to do is, in this session, formally start the co-designing strategic planning designing process. So we're shifting from inquiry-focused work to co-designing work. Does that make sense? It's really important to know where we are. Okay, let's move to the next slide. And just to remind each other, because I know that you do a lot of work apart from this strategic work, right? So I want to make sure we're all on the same page. We are here to design a 5-year strategy that has 3 very specific criteria. It has to be community-centric, it has to be financially viable, and it has to create tangible impact. And really what we're trying to create, and this is using the words from all of our interviews and Larry Walker's report, we're trying to create a result-driven living plan that aligns with community needs and maximizes the financial potential and stability of the organization. I think those are a simple sentence, but it has a lot of very critical components. So I want to make sure that everybody is following me as I take you through this journey. Are we all in agreement that that is what we're trying to do? Okay, wonderful. I want to set some expectations. You know, every planning session, every design process is a little bit different, which makes it exciting because it has to be designed for the unique organization that we're working with. But there are some constants that we know to be true. The first is when we start co-designing together, it's not a brainstorm session. I'm going to let that sit for a little bit. That's really important. It's a decision-making session. So by default, when we choose a strategy, it really entails making decisions that explicitly cut out other options. So a strategy, is really important to know, is not a wish list. And that can feel uncomfortable sometimes, right? Because we're using all of the information we have, all of the data to make the best guess, but we're not eliminating all risk. We're just optimizing the chances of success. So I just want to make sure everybody feels okay with that feeling. You know, it's uncomfortable sometimes, but that's normal, and that's part of the process. And we see that in every work that we do. Everybody okay with that? The other thing I want to set up is expectation is that it's an iterative process, right? It is not an instant gratification process. Sometimes it's not going to take a little bit of extra work. It might feel a little bit redundant, but that's okay because we're checking our work and we're making sure that our thinking is grounded in data and insights. And that everybody's voice has been heard. And I can't stress that enough. The importance of, as we said before, you know, collaboration and making sure that all stakeholders are part of this session and in this co-design process. So this is happening here, which is wonderful. I'm really thankful that we can come together, the staff and the board. And as you know, we're using the information from the community that's data that's quantitative data that's available to us in this moment through the Huron report and CVEP report, which is wonderful. And we're also going to add the community voice when we go to the community sessions, right? So it's very important that everybody feels included and then speak up. You know, this is the time to speak up, really, not after. And you know, that's what we're trying to do tonight. And so I just want to say, it's very difficult to estimate how much discussion is going to provide, you know, in this stage, whether it's going to go quickly or it's going to go really take a long time. So, you know, what we're going to try and do tonight, maybe it'll take tomorrow, and maybe we won't need tomorrow. I don't know. At this time, you know, I don't know how it's going to take. And what we're trying to do is very clear goals, okay, for these sessions. It's always important to know where we're going. The first is to reach consensus on the design approach we're going to take. Like, what are the components of this strategy that we agree are important to have in order to have a robust strategy? So that's what we call the design approach. Then tonight, we're going to start with the high-level pillars, which is one component of that approach. And we're going to reach consensus on those. And we're going to reach consensus on the goals that sit right underneath those pillars. So having those decisions agreed to, where we have a 70% consensus, as I always say, we're not going to get 100%, that's okay. When we get 70% consensus on those elements, then we can move to the selection of the programmatic initiatives that go underneath, right? There's going to be another selection. Okay. Do I have everybody with me? Are there any questions on the process, what we're trying to achieve tonight? Does everybody feel comfortable? Yeah? Okay, please.
Okay, so I'm just going to voice out this one little concern that's popping up in my head. And that is how this will interrelate with the community sessions that we have later on. Because I understand what you're saying, that we're explicitly cutting off possibilities and options. But we have those important sessions coming up later on. So I feel a little bit uncomfortable about that.
I will make you feel comfortable about that. It's a great question. Thank you for bringing it up and because for clarification. What I'm referring to is the whole process. The whole process from today until we get to the final version, basically, is a process of decision making and saying we will focus on this as our priority throughout the whole process. And as we're making that decision process and deciding to focus on certain things, we will involve the voice of each stakeholder. So we are not saying today we are cutting off possibilities that the community might say, we absolutely think this should be a initiative. Does that clarify? Okay, thank you for your question. Okay, so now that we know what we're trying to do and we have some expectations of what we can expect from our time together tonight, let's talk a little bit about the potential that you have in front of you. Okay, what I want to talk about is the findings, the key findings, and this is hyper distillation of the work that we did. But these are the key findings from our discovery because they will anchor all of our work tonight. Okay, what we know from all of the conversations we've had, review of the reports from the organizational assessment, we know that you are seen as the leading grant maker in the Coachella. We know that you've already made great progress towards being more accountable in demonstrating your impact with the implementation of the RPA framework. We know you can do more and we can build on that, but it's a great start. We know you've made great progress towards strategic grant making. And we know that you have a very highly motivated and dedicated, highly skilled staff who implements all of this work. And you already, when we talked to partners, or Megan was kind enough to start the community partner conversations, this idea of you being a thought leader and a convener for the community and encouraging strategic thinking is already out there in the universe. So and then we said that this is how we started our discovery report. You have a lot to build on, right? And we are convinced that you have the potential to do more. Any disagreements with what I said? Team, anything else to add from our discovery report that you feel I haven't reached? Okay. So how are we going to use this potential? How are we going to use this potential and show up to the opportunity that we have in front of us? That's really what the question is, right? What the work of this strategic plan is. So as a first step, and let me just say also that as I take you through this process, imagine that we're going from the top down to the bottom, right? We're going from big idea down to all the way down to the initiatives eventually. So we're still here at the big idea. And the big idea is we really think that the very first step in this co-designing process is mind shift. for the entire organization, for all of the key stakeholders who are in this room. And the mind shift is something that we'll use as we design every aspect of this plan. Can everybody hear me? So I keep putting it away. So to harness the full potential of your incoming influx from the lease and to ensure both short and long-term impact, we believe that it's incredibly important for this organization to evolve from being a grant maker to a health system amplifier. That is the journey that we believe you're taking on by creating this new strategy. So a grant maker, let's go down the list to try and wrap our heads around what that means, right? A grant maker distributes funds to the community organizations so they can deliver services. It's great. It's very important work. But it means by default that it is mostly reactive. Right? It's reactive to the applications, to the RFPs that you issue. It relies on grantee decisions, right? It is much more about you fund the grantee and then they do their work, and you know that's where your control ends. It makes decisions a little bit based on habit in politics, because that's what always happens in organizations, right? Depends on externally quality of work. We're much more dependent on what others do. It's really focused on programs and not system change. And that's really the biggest sort of opportunity here is when we have the vision to change the healthcare landscape of the Coachella Valley, we are talking about system change. So we need to think boldly. We need to think, really in a powerful, bold way. If you're a health system amplifier, you are literally a multiplier of all the good that is happening in the community. And you have the brand equity, you have the reputation, you have the seed for that. And this is also the way to achieve what you're looking to do, which is to think about how you can show up to the moment in the next 5 years, but to absolutely not limit yourselves to that and think about what does that look like 5, 10 years from now. Right? So it is an opportunity to set clear priorities and standards. It's an opportunity to convene the partners that can work together. And we have that in our mission, right? We are going to promote strategic partnerships. It is, working to build shared and scalable infrastructure. It is so important, and we keep going back to this, making decisions that are based on wider data and insight. We have a good start, but the more we can be a force multiplier in that, the better the decisions, the more we can track the impact measurement, the more we can make better financial decisions, right? And it aligns funding and operations to systems level goals. And we're thinking a bigger picture. Okay, I would love to know, this is some of this is going to require organizational change, some organizational change, right? You have to grow into this role. So just as a litmus test, like how does that feel and resonate for everybody to think of yourselves in this organization as growing and evolving from just, this what you know today to the potential of amplifying the health.
Well, I'll start out. I am so excited about being able to think broadly. We just attended the California Hospital Association Behavioral Health Conference, and we know that we are highly impacted because we have very few opportunities to provide behavioral health, mental health services in this community. And just coming from that, just from that bucket, we say, we need a psychiatric hospital, we need beds, we need outpatient clinics, we need providers. So, I'm thinking it was Yvette that brought it up. Let's do an RFP. So
I
thank you
see
for
your,
that, people.
your hand is raised, Ori. Not sure if they can see that.
There's one other thing that I would like to add to the mix, and that's the consideration that public trust in institutions has never been lower, ever. There's study after study after study that indicates this. The transition that Sophie's talking about here also tries to answer that because, to be perfectly honest, a lot of people are lost when they consider access and availability of their healthcare or information, right? So there's a filling of a void that, in an ideal world, to be perfectly honest, may not be exactly the role that a foundation would fill, but the reality is that we have an opportunity to fill that, and I think the people in the valley deserve that. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Anybody else? Government staff?
Even though this is a very good plan and very good long-term plan for making our community a better, healthier community, but it will take, I think, a lot to get us there because the health district, our residents have already, our nonprofits, our health systems that have already gotten used to the funding and are excited about the future funding. So it is going to be difficult to get their full support into this because they already have expectation for, and they have their own opinions of how the resources should be spent.
So I totally agree with that, but I think there's the opportunity here to change the narrative of what that is. Because we are primarily seen as a grant-making organization. And we've talked about just in the other sessions we've had about it's really doing a collective impact model where the district is leading that. And to the point of really being a health system amplifier. I agree with Letty 100%, but I think there's the opportunity too, as we roll out the strategic plan on the heels of Measure AA, is the communication aspect of how we are advancing the role of the district into a collective impact model to really affect the overall health of the valley. Additionally, too, by emphasizing the health system amplifier aspect is, to me, that helps push back on 500 people coming every month for a grant application once we start getting that influx of resources. So I really like the way this is going. But I really do agree with Letty. A lot of this is going to be, I'm looking at you, Will. But us too, as board members, is in the messaging and how we let the community know that we're doing this change as well. But I love the fact, I don't know if you used the word leveraging in there, but it was something like that. That's one of my big things is that, again, back into the communication aspect, to Carol's point, yeah, we do need an acute care behavioral health facility. We can't afford that. But how do we leverage the county? How do we leverage other healthcare institutions? And again, that's where I get back to, that's where I think the collective impact side of this will really make a large difference in that.
I do want to also acknowledge that this is not leaving grant making behind, right? This is what we're doing. It's just the viewpoint, the lens in which we do it. Yet also that it is, as all system change, all change takes time and it's gradual. So it's not going to be you get your grant. Oh, no, you're not going to get it. So 1,000%. But thank you for making those 2 points.
Well, I agree with what Director Galaris said. It's going to impact the community, our nonprofit organizations, what the applications are. The board adjust to it, as well as staff and the growth of staff to meet those needs. So everybody's going to be adjusting with this new strategic plan. It's very different for us from all of our years in what we've been doing. So, I mean, it's a whole system change, in my opinion.
If I have everybody's feedback, I'm actually excited to move on to the next slide because really it's to begin the discussion of how we're going to get there. So this is again focused on how we're going to get there in terms of setting priorities and making sure the organization is ready to meet the moment. I hear clearly that once we have started that process, it will need a very clear communication plan to the community. That's a separate, effort once we've started this work. But I hear that clearly. So in order to bridge us from where we are today to where we could potentially be, there are going to be a number of things that we need to take into consideration, right? And if you remember, these are very much all of the things that we considered in the discovery process. And when we asked and we were finally offered the opportunity to do this work, we said at every stage of the process, we're going to look at these elements because you have to look at all of these elements and how they work together in order to make sure you have a strong proposition. So, of course, the last time we met, we aligned on the North Star, the vision, and the mission. That was step number one. But as we move forward in the strategic plan, we need to consider what structures do we need in order to make it plausible? What will be the foundation's role? What will be the district's role? What are the legal considerations, right? We have to look at the processes that we're using and how we can optimize them and how we can use partnership building and reporting, all of those, the staffing. What is an important thing to think about? One of the things we need to think about when we set our organizational priorities is how will it be staffed? Will it make it easier to cross-pollinate that knowledge, cross-pollinate the efforts, cross-pollinate the impact? So staffing will be too. The tools, we're going to talk about this a lot. What data management system will you be using? What reporting system? We're confident that you can build on RBA as a starting point, but again, that's something to begin. And then, of course, the activities, which will come after we talk about the pillars. And also, critical, as we know at point, is how will we fund this? Where will the funding be? What type of funding? Is it real estate? Is it, co-funding approaches? That will come again once we've made these initial decisions of vision, mission, the strategic pillars, and the goals. And we can all of these considerations need to be taken into account. They're all interdependent. And we are also, with all the work that we do, are very aware that when something looks good on paper and is exciting, it's great. And as we call the organization, the organism has to accept the change, right? The medicine. So we're also very conscious of that, right? And actually, we joke. I hope you like us because we joke that once we deliver the plan, we're not going to just go away and be like, bye, good luck with that. We are getting invested. We want to make sure that the body accepts the new direction. But we think it's worth the work, and it's the right way to look at this challenge. Do I have everybody with me? Okay, fabulous. All right, so we've already accomplished goal number one. That's always, I'm a very goal-oriented person. So we're in agreement that this lens of making ourselves the healthcare accelerator is a good idea, right? That it's bold and that it might feel a little uncomfortable, which we said is okay, but we're gonna aim for that. Yeah. Okay, fabulous. Goal number one achieved. All right, so let's dive in to our work. And as I said, the goal tonight is going to be focusing on the strategic pillars and the goals. But I want to show you what the whole structure looks like so you can orient yourself where we are. So as you can tell, at the top is the vision. And that is the mission, and those are the North Star statements. And those we developed and refined last time we were together. And their purpose is to be our North Star. So every time we make a decision, we should really be going back to our North Star and saying, is this aligned? Okay, it's a pretty easy litmus test to avoid the wish list. So underneath those sit the strategic pillars, and those are 3 to 5 core priority areas that are core, right, that are at the core of our focus for the organization. This is what they represent, the core areas that we want to commit to for the next 3 to 5. The 3 to 5 core priorities we're saying, We look at the commitments, we look at the needs of the organization, we look at our capabilities, we know what we can do, and this is what we know can make the most impact in achieving our vision and mission. Okay. I know that sometimes it's a little hard to read, so I made sure everybody has a handout so you have that in front of you so you can see. Okay. Any questions on the strategic pillar? And here we're trying to aim for 3 to 5. Underneath those pillars sit our goals. And these are the directional outcomes the organization wants to advance under each pillar. Okay. And these pillars, when we talk about them, we need to think that they will require, it's not just we agree to this goal, we will then have to do the work of saying, okay, what's the staffing structure that we need? What are the resources that we need? What does that mean in terms of financing? So it's not chosen in isolation, so it's tempting sometimes to do just wordsmithing, but just to know that just selecting the goal at this moment is just a direction, and then it will be pressure tested with all of those elements. Is that clear, everybody? And then finally, underneath the goals, we have the key initiatives, right? And so those are the concrete, smart actions that we're going to take, and partnerships and all the initiatives that we will do to make those goals. We're not going to get to those tonight because that will be separate work. So our goal tonight is to really agree on the strategic pillars and agree on the goals. Or discuss them, move them forward. Okay. Now, just to remember that really the idea is to make the strategy as actionable and measurable as possible. That's the other thing we need to keep in mind, right? So we have come to, after looking at all of the data that was available to us, quantitative, qualitative, conversations, the Huron report, all those things, we've come to identify 4 strategic pillars that we want to share with you tonight. I want to reiterate that these are, a starting point. There's no perfect answer. So, but this is what we would like to propose. 2 of the strategic pillars are an evolution of pillars that you're following today because they align with the community needs, right? It's just a question of refining them so they're more easily acted upon and measured. Okay. And then 1 is going to house and is going to talk and focus on the social determinants of health, because we know that is something that is on everybody's mind and hearts. And we also know from looking at other healthcare districts that is, everybody thinks it's an important trend. We need to do that. And then the 4th one is really going to be driving this home, this idea of data-driven insights, which is also a key thing when we talk about how this new strategic plan can be successful, and how you can also be able to adapt it along the way, because it's a living document. So you need the data to know, is this working, not working? Do we need to pivot somewhere? Do we need to enhance something? Okay, any questions before we start? So this is the structure. Is everybody okay? That was goal number 2, that we are going to follow this process, and does that feel good to everybody? Yeah. Okay, fabulous. Goal 2 achieved. All right, so I'm going to start with the first one. So the first strategic pillar is workforce development. Equitably increase the workforce of primary and specialty care and behavioral health professionals. So we know that is integrated in goals 2 and 3 of the current strategic plan. We know from the Huron report that is still a critical need in the community. So and it is a key strategic pillar for the organization. We would propose that we would keep that in. Yes. Could we take a look at what all the pillars are going to be before we go into it, so that we know? Thank you so much, because I'm remiss in saying that. That was in my notes to say, I know it's really, really exciting to try and to jump in, but I think it will be easier for us to have a robust discussion if we go through all of them. So thank you very much for that reminder. Yes. If we could take a look at them. before we discuss each one of them? Yes, that's what we're gonna do. So we're just gonna work, we're gonna introduce them very briefly. And then we will move to the Miro board, which is our work board, so we can start taking notes okay, does that sound good?
Yeah, it's because I just had a few notes, and one of my notes were like working on organizational and like governance, financial stability. And so that kind of it could be tied into this a little within like our organization. And so I'm wondering if it might align somewhere else or
Yes, but all of these have to have those components, right? So yes, they don't live in isolation. And then we would propose as an idea that the goals that sit underneath strategic pillar 1 be divided between the two key things that drive workforce development, which is recruitment and retention. Okay, so that is strategic pillar number 1 and goals number 1 and goal number 2 underneath. Okay. All right, I'm going to pass it over to my team to take you through goals 2, 3, and 4, and then we'll come back together on the Miro board and we can start having reactions and feedback. Leah, over to you.
Can everyone hear me okay? Yes? Okay, so the second strategic pillar that we would propose is around awareness and access. So equitably increasing awareness of health services and access to healthcare services. This strategic pillar builds on work the district is already doing to expand awareness and access. And based on the plethora of data sources we examined during our discovery period, some of which Sophie highlighted, this remains essential work going forward, and this remains a critical need for the residents of the Coachella Valley. So we see this strategic pillar being split into 3 different goal areas: awareness, physical access, and digital access. Within awareness, we have an opportunity to focus on increasing community awareness around what services exist and how to navigate them. Within physical access, we have an opportunity to address the persistent physical barriers such as distance, transportation, and clinic capacity to make in-person care more reachable across the valley. And within the third area, digital access, we have an opportunity to expand digital and telehealth access, reduce wait times, overcome geographic challenges, and increase accessibility of healthcare services. I will pass it on to Angelica for the next proposed pillar.
All right, can you all hear me clearly in the room? Okay, I can barely see you, but I think I saw a thumbs up back there. Wonderful. So it is great to connect with all of you again. During our last session, we took about 2 hours to walk through the social determinants of health, really have a discussion around what do we mean when we say social determinants of health? How do we want to define that? What are some key topics that we want to prioritize? And as we started to think about this conversation as it relates to the social determinants of health, we know that that's sprinkled throughout the entire strategic plan, the work that you have done prior to us joining this opportunity and experience, and then thinking about what we've heard from the community. And understanding that, again, the social determinants of health are sprinkled throughout each topic, including workforce development, this focus around access and awareness. We wanted to uplift some very focused areas around three key areas of neighborhood and built environment, social and community context, and economic stability. The strategic pillar of engagement really centers the community. This is where we get to a lot of the heart of the work. This is where we are thinking about what we've heard from the community, what you have shared with us about the feedback that you've received from the community, the information that's highlighted in so many of your reports.
Angelica, there's a helicopter that's landing close by, which is making a lot of noise.
I love it.
So you may have to repeat just the last few words.
I love it so much. Just like Angelica speaking, cue the helicopter.
Yeah, shout into your computer.
It's all good because the sound quality is great. We don't hear the helicopter. at all. So I will just regroup very quickly. The strategic pillar around the social determinants of health is community engagement, with the brief title of engagement. It centers the voice of the community, the feedback that we've heard from you, and the information that we've gotten from the reports. The goals that are connected to this particular pillar include neighborhood and built environment, and that has a very specific focus around transportation, housing, water quality, and air quality. The second goal focuses on social and community context, which really focuses on loneliness. We know we're currently in a loneliness epidemic and the impact that it has on mental health. The next is around food insecurity and health literacy. And under the last goal, there's this focus around economic stability and thinking about how we engage opportunities of employment to increase equitable access to care, housing, and other resources. All right. Is the helicopter gone?
What's that?
Okay, good.
Just stay
All right, with
close
that, I'll
to
pass it to
your mic.
Ori.
Thank you. Just stay close to your mics on your computers. That's it. I guess
Yeah.
the only other thing we can try.
Okay.
Is this working? Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, perfect. The fourth pillar is really fundamental to everything else that we're talking about, right? This is infrastructure. This is table stakes. If we want to transition, and I think we do, want to transition from being a grant given organization to an organization that really leads, is a thought leader, is an aggregator, is a convener, really the way that we talked about it early on in this presentation, we're going to have to become a data-driven organization. Now, today, there are bits and pieces of this, right? We have some data systems already in place. We have some skill sets and capabilities, Megan, Gracie, who are spending a lot of time aggregating data. We have the current impact measurement framework that we can build upon. But I don't know if we are really answering our opportunity to lead in aggregating, sharing, and utilizing data to drive evidence-based decisions and measurable impact, not just for ourselves, but for other organizations, our grantees, our partners across the ecosystem. And I think that the right way to approach this is looking at being a data-driven organization with two lenses. The first one involves our own organizational data maturity, becoming an organization.
The helicopter's coming back.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'll pause here for a
Hold on
second.
one
Let me know
second.
when it's gone.
Actually, next to the hospital. So,
Yeah, I figured. Yeah,
yeah, just hold for 1 minute.
no worries. No problem.
Lives are being saved while
Yeah,
we plan to.
more important.
All right,
I love
good
it.
to go.
Okay. The first lens with which I think we should look at this is internal, right? Our own data maturity as an organization. As I mentioned, we have some of the tools, we have a little bit of the skill sets, but there's a lot more to build on in terms of talent, in terms of skills, in terms of the tools that we're using, and most importantly, our adoption of those tools. It is far more effective to have a good tool that is used and adopted widely and consistently than to have the perfect data tool that is used sparingly. And that is something that we're going to need to talk about because a lot of the tools and processes that we may have aren't necessarily being used today. So the internal lens, the resources, the structures, the processes that will be able to help us become an organization that brings in the right data and incorporates that into our decision making. And then on the inverse of that, becoming an organization that empowers our ecosystem to make smart decisions with the information that we have and can then distribute and disperse back to them. So being able to aggregate information from all of our partners whenever possible and whenever appropriate, disseminate it, enable data aggregation, reporting, and creating those partnerships that are data driven and allow organizations to share information amongst each other, among themselves, and create those partnerships outside of the sphere of our central position in the valley is actually a really, really critical position that a lot of your partners, your current partners, are very eager and yearning for. They don't know where to go to get a lot of the information. They don't know where to go to connect with other organizations. They don't know to get an understanding of what's happening on the ground, not just in their sphere, but in the bigger picture, behaviors, trends, analysis, those types of things. And we have a real opportunity to forge ahead and really become the linchpin for how the Valley makes data-driven decisions and how different organizations do that. Over to you, Sophie.
It'd be good to move on to the Miro board where we can see everything, or does anybody in your brain? Okay. Okay, so let's move on now to the Miro board, and we can go through each of these and just, now that you see the collective vision, and let's get your feedback. How do they resonate? How do they land for you? Let's start with, we're not there yet. Hold on. Wonderful. Can we load that up, please, Leah? Okay, perfect. All right, can everybody see that?
So if I may, I'm gonna start sharing like some of what, in my mind, pillars could be, and then we'll have a conversation on where they can be put. So one of them was, pillar would be having stronger community partnerships, collaboration. The other one would be like aiming for like health equity, or social determinants of health, would be under that purpose for that pillar would be to reduce the disparities by targeting the root causes of poor health. I would like to see, maybe it's based on our current strategic plan and how I'm seeing it, but maybe like just priorities on my end. The other one would be one specific to like behavioral health, or our response to that. And then the other would be expanding access to both primary and specialty care. And again, that I could see could go under like workforce development. So that's kind of like my overview. And then also right now, I'm pretty sure I'll have some other ones.
Yeah, I just want to give an overall view of what I see here, because I really do think, especially putting it into four, to me sets a real clear vision of what the district is about. And at a 30,000-foot level. I like the goal aspect too. And what I really like too about having the pillars is that it gets rid of the problems we have now about whether grant applications fit into a certain goal opportunity or not. I totally agree with everything you said. I think some of them though would fall under more of the action item. Yeah, but I totally agree. The only thing was on, and thank you for doing the social determinants of health. You heard me. So, the only one was on, I think it was on pillar 3. Wait a minute, it may have been this one. Oh, health service. It's pillar 2. And sorry to jump ahead, but this actually gets to Director Barraz's comments on when we talk about health services. A lot of people still have in their mind that that's physical health. So I think it's important that even within the language of pillar 2, it should be behavioral health should somehow be incorporated within the language. I'm sorry to jump ahead.
And let me know if you want to hear all your comments. We should go back. You know, it is.
Okay, so on strategic pillar 1, I don't like the fact that I can't see Director Barraza's comments because I might be repeating myself. I hope not. But what I think is missing there is when I see the goals, I think it's kind of related to number 2, the health equity. But when I think of recruitment and retention, I think the third goal is cultural competency. And that is through growing our own future professionals. I think the district has a history of doing that, and I think we have seen the benefit of doing that. So even before recruitment is the growing of future professionals.
Yeah. As a part of that, as an alternative to cultural competency, because it's very difficult to reach the goal of competency, could we aim for the goal of cultural empathy or cultural understanding? Because
Understanding, I think, would be
yeah,
crucial.
what I want us to get to are eventually we will lay out the initiatives and activations around these goals and pillars. And we want to ensure that we have some measurable goals, measurable activities. With cultural competency, we can't really measure that, but we can measure a level of empathy in certain ways, and we can measure a level of understanding.
I think it goes back to the common language that we're kind of adopting,
Yeah.
because I've always heard it be referred to as cultural competency coming from my accounting background. But as we are defining some of these terms to be able to introduce and to be able to change the narrative. Okay, so
that-
strategic goal number 2. I like the ones that are mentioned, but I also would like, again, to be thinking before addressing the problems, and there are problems, going back to being able to avoid having some preventable diseases like heart disease and diabetes. So looking into how do we not only bring awareness of this the health services, but how do we get them to actually start having better lifestyles, make better choices, starting at I know first 5 is 0 to 5, but starting from early on in their lives before they get to the point where we are having to deal with a lot more serious issues.
I'm not clear on, can you elaborate on that, Calvin? Is that the things like, better nutrition, addressing food deserts, those types of things, like life choices and decisions? Because those types of things, correct me if I'm wrong, Angelica, you know more about this than I'll ever know, but like, aren't those usually sit under social determinants of health?
So it does sit.
Closer to the other one, because we're looking at the awareness of health services, the awareness of what were the other ones? I see that there's connection to that, to introducing health education earlier on. And I know our schools do a really good job, and I know it's just that it needs to be something that I think it should be identified as a goal.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I think, everyone's correct. I think we're all thinking about the nuances and layers of how all of this is connected. And that's part of what we laid out internally in thinking about how each of these pillars and the associated goals are connected to the final framework that we will decide on. So remember, during our social determinants of health conversation, we saw examples, and we shared this with everyone after our last session, examples of that large framework that showed the interconnected relationship between these various pillars, different partnerships that we could engage in, ways for us to make systems level impact. And I think that's part of what we're feeling right now. Another piece to think about, and I think this is what you were getting at, Ori, is how this fits under the engagement portion, and it does. But before we even get to these larger pieces around the neighborhood and built environment, this focus on social context, people have to actually be aware of the services that are out there and be able to have access to those services as well. So those things can't happen before we even get to that place.
Okay.
And then and one last thing that I want to say, because it's a great point, it ties back to that conversation that we had about we can have all the services that we want out there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll use them. And that's why this access, this awareness and access focus is so important.
Got it. Got it. Okay, that's great. I take on your points, Director, completely. That makes perfect sense. Thank you for the clarification.
I don't really have anything on pillar 3. Pillar 4, what I have on my notes is the data-driven. I totally agree about the partnerships and that those are key, but I think what we have to also include in there, the goal is to be able to what we talk about collective impact and how we are all having buy-in into it. So it can't just be our data or somebody else's data. It has to be the buy-in of the different partners to have this, and that we are all following these guidelines. So trying to influence others to adopt and to see the benefit of having this collective impact. That's
1,000%. I couldn't agree more. And giving them the frameworks to then so if we're asking our grantees to report back to us, we need to give them the appropriate frameworks and then follow up and make sure that they do so in an appropriate and consistent manner, again and again and again, and make that a condition of our funding, really. So yeah, absolutely, I couldn't agree more. By the way, I think this also extends potentially to other data, right? Other data that may be important or relevant or critical. It can even be national health level data. It doesn't even have to be from our specific communities. If there's relevant data that shows something that was done somewhere else and that we should take into account, we should be aware of that. We should integrate that into our decision making. So completely agree.
I think the goal should be 4.3 or whatever. To continue to develop the collective impact system.
Corey, I would propose that connected impact, collective impact could be integrated into the pillar. Actually, as a guiding principle, because if we say that is, if that's our big vision and we all buy into that, then we could, I think we should consider that, because that makes it very tangible and aspirational.
I like that.
As an area of focus.
I like that. And that also
just
and that also means that it's something that we're going to execute on regardless of whether we're looking internally at our own organization and the infrastructure and the tools and the processes that we need to build, or externally at the way in which we enable decision making. So on part of our partners. So I like that a lot.
Wonderful. Okay. I had some suggestion. You're next. Under workforce development, I know that we need to address the shortage of the workforce and the climate, the unfriendly climate that we have here during the summer that sometimes doesn't attract the best professionals. And the other is that there's ways to work with our hospitals who are very committed to recruiting physicians and nurses, so that there's a collaboration effort there, and incentivizing, so that I think that should be part of those goals and pillars. And the other thing is that it isn't on there that I think we should consider is philanthropic development, We have many other nonprofit and foundations in this valley, a lot of them. And we've worked with some of them in the past. Even the California Foundation has been our partner with Pat. Alejandro has worked with our farm workers people. So I think that's part of our mission to, as Greg said, leverage what we have. I know that we, as a governmental agency, can obtain bonds to and work with partner organizations to build and develop. The other thing is notes. Collaboration. I know that we have other organizations that get together and talk about the other nonprofits in the community get together and talk about how they can work together. And I think that would be a great facilitator role for us in the future.
Can I just clarify, Don, first? I think agree 100% with everything, but wouldn't some of those be key initiatives as far as what we're doing?
Yes, I think
Agree with you.
let's get everybody's. We can, triage, and go back to our structure. Here, and how do we plan it?
John, I was just going to mention that on pillar 4 about weaving in the words collective impact into the pillar 4, it sort of sets the stage as well that can't do alone. And that with that $650 million coming in over the next 30 years, that it will have to be divvied up as well. But we have it there, standing out there, right in your face, you know that we're not the only ones.
And it provides the accountability that you need to have to the residents. Because that's also something that's been, a theme over and over again.
So can I chime in on that? One of the things that we're going to need to find a way to communicate to our stakeholders, our external stakeholders, is that actually the biggest investment that in my mind, I would pose that the biggest investment that we need to actually make with the money that we're getting is in ourselves. And this is where this is the start and end of this pillar, right? This is first and foremost an investment in our ability to become an effective organization in a sustainable way, not just for the next 5 years, but for the next 30. So Chris, this answers a lot of the previous conversation that we've had about how do we balance between the immediate needs, right? And creating something that, planting the trees that we're, that we're not going to sit in the shade of. And I think that is something that is important to say, right? We're going to need to invest in ourselves, in the infrastructure, in the skill sets, and the capabilities, in those types of things.
So that makes me think of another, well, when I think it fits under pillar 1, and that has to do with recruiting and retaining and growing our own professionals, but also on maybe it should be, I think it's just, I'm changing my mind to awareness in that being able to reach our hard to reach populations, that we need to be able to have the trusted partners that are able to go in and make those connections, and they're better able to do that. So that is the investment in those trusted partners. And I know that we're just kind of focusing on these 4 right now, right? We're not proposing new pillars at this time.
That's the next, if you feel that there is. So again, we're trying to aim for 3 to 4 areas of focus. An additional pillar.
Yes, I agree.
So I think the next pillar would be building the infrastructure, the health system. That we talked about the need for urgent care centers, a hospital, how to address those I think that's separate than the other pillars. So, building the infrastructure for health systems, not systems, it will be healthcare, would it be a system? Just the bricks and mortar.
Wouldn't that be part of fiscal acts?
Yeah, it would be.
Because then you got the key initiatives that will go below. Your goals for fiscal action. And what you're talking about, I think is going to be.
Okay, you're right.
And it's breaking up a little bit, but did you say the brick and mortar? Was that?
Does anybody mind if we give Dr. Logston a 5-minute summary of where we are? Can you do that, Sophie? Yes, do a 5-minute break. Sorry.
I believe so. Let's take a couple of seconds where it's important to fix. There's a
Oh, yeah. Okay, well. Yeah, I'll see. What is the role? Is it wrong? What is the role? Oh, the change thing. It's okay.
That's true. It's the sequence.
Yes, we can, I think.
Okay. So, okay, Dr. Langston is brought up to date. I think we have everybody back. Do I have everybody back on my team? Angelica, I see you.
Hey.
I'm trying to grab some water.
That's good stuff. Hi, everybody.
Did you get
That room's party. North Joe.
Okay.
all right? Shall we move on? So where are we? Okay, I think my team is back, but I'm not sure. Okay.
Yes,
So
we're here. We're
let's
here,
go.
Sophie.
Let's just, I think we did it's a lot of information that we shared. I think we're doing a really great job of moving along the process. I hope everybody feels like everybody's coming along together. So let's just start at the strategic pillar level, because I think some of the ideas and some of the concerns that are being brought up actually come under either the goal or under the initiative. And we're not going to get to the initiative level now, right? So I would recommend that we go through the comments on each pillar to make sure that we have that level agreed to. Okay. And so let me just look on the board. I think it's easier for me to do that rather than move around. Okay.
Most of the comments from the whole time.
On the goals, yeah. So what I would love to do is, if it's possible, can we take a vote? Right. And again, this isn't a design process. It's not like you can't come back and say, I'm wondering, okay? But let's just keep the momentum going, and let's take a vote across the pillars. And say, yes, this resonates with me. And again, in our heads, we're thinking this delivers on our vision and mission. It fits the community needs. It's actionable. It's measurable. Those are the things we're thinking about. Okay, so can I take a
And can we
vote from everybody on
can we just
strategic
add
pillar number 1?
can we just add one thing and a reminder that we're going to get feedback from the community as well. So all of this will be informed by the community through those conversations next year.
Thank you, Angelica. Okay, should we take a show of hands if you're in agreement with strategic pillar number 1, workforce expansion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Do we count everybody? So we have 10, 12. So we have a unanimous vote. Chris, we have you in? Oh, yeah. Okay, unanimously approved. Excellent. Let's move on to strategic number 2, pillar number 2. Awareness and access, equitably increase awareness of health services and access to healthcare services. Anybody not agree? You want to take a vote? Raise your hand.
Is this the one that? We're free to believe that it's balance of the community goal instead of control.
That's going to be a tactic
Okay.
or an approach. Yeah. Okay. So
Is, as I said, is that I think there needs to be some mention of behavioral health in there somewhere. Because as I said, when people think of health services, the vast majority think of just physical health.
equitably increase awareness of health, the primary specialty, and behavioral health care services. Yeah, behavior is in number 1. I am already on. So the first one is about the workforce, but I understand what you're saying. It makes more sense to have it also in pillar 2 since we have it in pillar 1. Okay. So adequately. Okay, so we have. Okay, everybody says yes. We can note that. Wonderful. Pillar number 3. I feel like I'm on a game show.
Yeah.
It is a come on down.
I'm like, going once, going twice. Engagement. Okay, so this is engaging in strategic partnerships, programs, and funding to actively address essential social determinants of health. Everybody okay as a core focus for the organization?
Is this, I was getting notes about, so, idea of, helping lifestyles to preventing chronic diseases, is this where we're thinking like, because there
Can we-
was.
Yes.
Can we be
but it
sure
is-
to use
but
the
it is-
microphone so we can take the notes? Because we can't hear.
Now that's what we could say about you guys. Okay, so what were you saying, Greg? You think it's where?
I think that would go into goal number 1. The neighborhood and built environment, where
Yes.
you're doing the preventative social determinants of health.
Yes, yes, it would go underneath, it would go underneath that. Okay, everybody good with pillar number 3? Thank you, Dr. Alexis. Pillar number 3? Yeah, okay, everybody okay with pillar number 3? Donna, what would you like to say? No, I mean,
I was wondering if we were leaving, I know they go towards social health versus. I lifestyle.
That you guys determined that you wanted social determinants of health versus determinants of health.
And it includes.
Yeah, because we voted on this last time that we wanted social, just because that's the
Right.
lingo
Yeah.
that everybody uses.
But determinants of health have 4 different things that don't really tie into social determinants of health.
But we can include those in the tactics.
There you go.
all right, so did everybody, we have an agreement on pillar 3, and then the last one, I'm pretty sure we have an agreement, which is becoming a data-driven organization that drives measurable collective impact. We've added. Everybody okay with the switch? Fabulous. Okay. Okay, let's go backwards with the goals because I think this is probably the one that has the least questions around it. So we added collective impact system, that's fine. And I think we've actually addressed both of those comments. So are we okay with the fact that we're going to have 2 goals under the data-driven pillar, which is to build our internal infrastructure and help become a hub for external partners so that we can build those partnerships and drive that collective impact? Okay. I think we're
And
good
do we
with
have,
those two
and
goals.
sorry, can I just add one thing? And do we have an understanding that this is an area that we're gonna need to invest in? And that's gonna require funding. That's gonna require staff. That's gonna require resources.
That's the.
That would be the tactics.
I'm sorry?
My question here is, I mean, isn't everything that we're looking at here being measurable? So why are we calling out collective impact specifically as measurable?
Okay, I don't think we have a full understanding of the full potential for collective impact. I think it is I think so. We need to invest in learning more about it, but it's separate than just collecting data and evaluating ourselves. It's having others also being in the same role as us, as being partners, not us being a funder, but partners. So
I agree with that completely. I'm just wondering why we need the word measurable. Because isn't everything that we're doing in our strategic plans supposed to be measured?
So like Chris said, instead of measurable after decisions, do like for collective impact.
Community collective impact, or
To serve the collective impact?
Word measurable. How do you define, so you're not measuring collective impact, to me that means something.
well, no, but we're measuring everything in the strategic plan. I mean, that's our goal, is to have everything measurable. I think what I'm hearing from Director Delara is that it's a collective impact with all organizations, the entire community. So not necessarily measurable, but maybe another word that defines and community collective impact, or
Evidence-based decisions for community collective impact.
I have a good amount of experience with collective impact, like place-based collective impact organizations. And what I can share is that measurability is sort of synonymous with collective impact. It is in many of the organizations, sort of the anchor of it is the fact that they are sort of weaving together the very, very sort of otherwise disparate data sources and analytic capacities. And also, just as was absolutely correctly said, there's so much more that goes into it than just making sort of measurability widespread. And so I completely understand the question, but I also just would reassure that any collective impact initiative would be anchored by measurability if the term is used or if the descriptor is added on.
Yeah, measurable, I can agree, that's nice, that's nice. I want to make sure you agree that flag is.
That's a really good point you said. So that's what I wanted to hear, is just that we agree when you have a collective impact, that is a measurable thing you're evaluating. Because it seemed redundant when I read it, but I wanted to make sure we really made sure we were focused on the fact that to define that impact, you are going to have some objective information to do so.
Would everybody feel comfortable with community of collective impact? Okay. All right, so I think we're good with that and the two goals. Okay, let's move on. Let's go going backwards, just change it up. Strategic pillar number 3, engagement. Engage in strategic partnerships, programs, and funding to adequately address essential social determinants of health. We all agreed on that. And then the 3 goals underneath there were neighborhood and built environment, social and community context, and economic stability. And there was a comment about where do we fit in preventative care, and I think that preventative care can be an initiative under 3.1. We'll sort of put it in, into the bucket of initiatives when we get to that. Are we good with the goals?
And where do we decide to insert our leverage and our collaboration with other foundations? Is that here in 3 or 2?
I think that's going to be across a lot of the work that you do.
Mhm.
I think that's an implementation strategy. Right? That's an implementation strategy versus a goal.
That'll be part of the initiatives that will follow along these goals.
Because it will fall under a number.
It will fall under across a number of these goals, absolutely. Especially if we're trying to make collective impact, especially if we're trying to be an accelerator. Yeah. Okay. Are we good with this?
Would education fall under economic stability?
Education would fall under awareness.
Hold on. What do we mean by education? Educating the public about the availability of services or about the prevalence of specific conditions and disease and the awareness that they should have? Or are we talking about education initiatives?
Like with academic partnerships.
Academic partnerships. I think that still aligns with
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
still aligns with.
Go ahead, Angelica.
It still aligns with what Sophie just shared with the team. Our goal is to have various types of partnerships that will create the greatest impact across the board for each pillar. So I don't think we have to limit it to a particular category. I think the partnerships will evolve based on the pillar and the goals and the initiatives. Can we
So we are okay with this goal number 3 and the goals underneath it? We get it unanimous? Okay. I think we're good to go. Okay, number 2. Awareness and access. Equitably increase awareness of health services and access to primary specialty and behavioral health services. I think we're okay with that. We talked about need trusted partners to help us connect to our hard to reach partners. That's a tactic. And that's also what we just talked about. We'll be using partnerships. Health services, people assume this is physical health, behavioral health should be included. So we did do that. That's been addressed. Avoid diseases. How do we prevent instead of just treat? That is also, that is through awareness, physical access, and digital access.
Everybody talked about including that preventative type measure under pillar 3 as well, under goal 1 of social determinants of awareness and all that.
Right, but that would be
it would be an awareness under pillar 2.
Right, it would be underneath. Okay. Are we good with strategic goal 2 and all the goals underneath? Yes. Okay. We have one more to go. We've achieved all of our goals for tonight. Okay, strategic goal number 1, workforce development. Yeah.
What about policy making? Is that something that the district, I know we've talked about before about, the fact that we invest time in legislative issues. And if we really do want to be known as the premier healthcare provider, so policy being able to influence policy, would that be another part?
I would say absolutely. We can't hear you.
But under which pillar would it fall?
It's not under. I think that for policy, it depends on the type of policy. Across the board, you have an opportunity to influence policy under every pillar. So when we think about the initiatives that we want to implement, policy engagement can be enacted in every category, actually, because it's a larger systems level change. So it
That's a
doesn't
good
have to
point.
fit under one pillar.
Yeah, I think it would go under, yeah, all of them, and it can be at the implementation level. That's how you
Yes.
influence.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's color.
I understand correctly, you're talking about just policy within our board generated developed by our board for the district.
Yeah.
Is that what you meant, Letty, or were you meant like legislation like, at the pillars app? Because I was thinking it could live under like data, because I mean, that's gonna make us strong, right? Like if we're gonna try to drive policy, having that data is what's gonna help us, right? Like,
I agree, but I also would argue too that if as we look at the tactics under each goal, is like say under awareness is making our elected officials aware of the needs of the district and the residents here. So I think as we go through the tactics portion, I agree. I think a lot of it's going to be way under pillar 4, but I think as we look at the tactics under each goal, is where does policy fit into that?
Can definitely add that to the discussion. And also it goes back to the very first thing I said at the beginning, which is the decisions that we have to make become real, because you can't do everything, because it has staffing implications, because it has bandwidth implications. So yes, we'll put that there, and then we're going to have to evaluate like how much time and effort and resources you want to dedicate to that, and does that have the maximum impact on the community? Because at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to marry, right? What you're best positioned to do to meet the greatest needs in the community. So it definitely up for discussion for sure, but that is, that's where it goes after here. All right, we good with number 1 and goals 1 and 2? Yes. Okay. So thank you so much for going through this. Let me tell you a little bit about the next steps. So we have accomplished all our goals for tonight, right? We've done the strategic, we've agreed on the big vision, becoming a healthcare accelerator. We've talked about the process that we're going to follow, which is you've done beautifully, and I think it's working for everybody. If there's any other feedback, please let us know. We've achieved getting those 2 components done tonight, which is an amazing job. So what we're going to do next is we have started to pressure test these pillars with the existing initiatives that you guys are doing. What we'd like to do is to sit with the staff and really see, out of all the initiatives, where would we put them under those pillars and those goals, and which one of them is really working? Like get some data, whatever data we can get to say this is worth continuing, and then adding some new initiatives that have come out of the Discover report, where we take into consideration what's happening in the environment, the advances of AI, for example, and technology. And then we will take all of that to the community in February and say, this is what the vision is, this is what the mission, this is pillars. Is that what do you want to add? What is your perspective? Does this meet your needs? What would you do differently? What we're also going to do is start thinking and do a parallel work stream to start thinking about like, what does that mean from an organizational perspective? Because again, all of this has to be couched in the reality of the organizations, the resources, the finances, the processes, those 5 areas that we always evaluate everything in, so it's not in a vacuum. So that's where we are. Any questions about the process? How are everybody feeling? Good. Okay. So I'm happy to say that we don't need you back tomorrow, because you did such a great job today. Unless you want to continue the discussion and start thinking about those initiatives, but we've done the hard part of saying, okay, these are the big areas, and now we have to start filling in those areas, and then there'll be a time where it's going to be another very painful process of making those decisions. So unless you want to come back and discuss it further tomorrow, I think we're in a really good place for us to sit with the staff and start looking at those initiatives what's worked, what can we add, and then bring it back to you and the community.
I'm perfectly fine with not going back tomorrow. We don't need to, but I would like to have the staff session recorded so that we can look back into it or just that would be more like for staff. If we can have there, yeah, sure, recorded.
Oh, sure. Does that work, Chris? You know the process better than me.
You can do that, but what we would be doing, you would actually be. I think my exciting when we come together, is that right? Well, I'm not sure that would benefit you, but
I know,
I think.
I would still like to see in case we need to go back.
It's something.
A few weeks ago, the board was asked to do a survey on how we evaluate programs that we are currently funding, and we're given the list, and then we're assessing whether we thought that they would meet. And is that what you're gonna be looking at? Okay, 'cause I'm curious to see how that comes out.
We're going to be looking at.
An
Sorry.
opportunity, like for us as board members, to suggest initiatives or tasks? Or would you prefer that we have the staff do first, or?
First, to answer your question, Director Lawrence, the results of the Moscow are in the discovery report. So in the discovery report, we are already highlighted. These are the things that should be moving forward. So that is definitely a starting point. That's the starting point. And that included both the staff and the board. That's the starting point. Then again, we have to look at what the community needs are, what the trends are, that we need to react to. What we don't have is, so what we did in the discovery process is we call diagnosis. We're like, you're making some impact and but we don't know exactly at this moment until we dig a little deeper what initiatives are working. And that's the piece that we're missing. So that's what we're not asking the staff to go first and say, what would you like to see in the initiatives? What we're doing is we're doing due diligence to say, let's look at what's actually working, and then we'll bring that forward, and then we'll bring everybody back. Does that make sense?
Okay, so another question, just to get an understanding of what is it that you're looking at and what's being incorporated in this plan. The meetings that you had with the community and the different groups that you schedule, when do we find out summary, how do we find out what did they say?
Okay, well, so those meetings were not to discover specific data points. It was to introduce ourselves to the community so we could be integrated and welcomed into the process. It wasn't to gather like what, tell us what they're doing badly, and it was to get like, oh, this is who Soin is, and we want to know like the partners and what you're working on, and who in the community are you working with, and what are you seeing. So it's just much more of like a get to know you process than it was fact finding.
Sorry, question. Are we talking about the community meetings or the partner meetings that we had in our last visit? Because
The partner meetings.
okay, I just wanted to make sure because we were saying community meetings.
So
Okay.
the community meetings is where we're going to get. Yes, and so that's one thing I think we're all on the same page, but those are going to take place in February. You saw that we're going to come back 2 times, 4 days at a time. And obviously everybody is welcome and encouraged to come. And we're going to do some, again, reaching out to the community, to invite as many people to participate as possible to get them comfortable with the process. So that's what's ahead of us right now.
We provided that list of dates and that in code zone. We are working on the physical venue. And so hopefully those dates and the zones won't change. It's subject to just solidifying those venue.
So yeah, we're going to get to work on those, working with the staff on those initiatives as soon as we can. And then I think we have a date to come back in January, but we might come back earlier. and start working on the initiatives. But again, those are going to be, initial lists because we have to get to the community. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, team.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.